In this lesson, we will take our oil pan surface body and knit it to our gear housing, mirror this surface to the backside, add in some fillets along the way, and then looking at various options as we go through this. So again, just like with the previous lessons, what we have are two different files that we're going to open that are going to be available for this lesson, I should say. We have our completed model and we have our lesson model. So let's go ahead and open up both of those, and let's look at our engine housing completed model first. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding these items underneath the oil pan items folder that we created in the last lesson. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create our oil pan housing knit. So before we move any further, let's go ahead and turn off some of our sketches in here. Let's right click on this and let's go ahead and hide that. A lot of the modeling that we've done that referring to these sketches is pretty much behind us, and we want to be able to see some of these surfaces as we resolve these into knitted surfaces and eventually into a thickened solid. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to knit our oil pan to the housing. So we're going to take all of our different surface bodies associated with the housing, and right now we should have about 6 up here. So if we open up our surface bodies folder, you can see all the different items in here. What we're not going to do is right now we're going to go ahead and we're going to ignore the vertical shaft trim, which is the vertical shaft. If we click on the items over here in our surface bodies, it shows you what those are. But we're going to take our oil pan trim, which is actually part of the housing, but remember the last feature that modified that surface body, it assumes that name. We don't necessarily have to rename these because later, as I mentioned before, these are all going to disappear. Once we get done with our surface bodies and create a solid out of this, those are going to disappear. So we're going to take all these elements and we're going to associate them. We're going to put them all together. We're going to knit them all together into one surface body. So we have 6 up there. And once we get done with this, if we take our oil pan housing knit and make that part of our model, now we have 2 bodies. We have our vertical shaft trim and our oil pan housing knit. Pretty slick. So eventually we're going to get rid of all these surface bodies, as I mentioned. So that folder is going to become less and less significant as we move on. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and mirror these over. And what we've done is we've created the back side, or the front side of this, all the elements in the front side, and we're going to mirror those over to the other side, as well as the vertical shaft. So we're going to take those vertical shaft, that vertical shaft feature, surface body, we're going to mirror that over too. So you notice we have our blue lines in here still. We have the blue lines associated with the vertical shaft and the 2 sides of our housing. So we're going to go ahead and knit those together, and that's what this option does. But one thing to keep in mind, and we're going to do this a little bit differently with our lesson model, is we're going to take a lot of these options that are available after this, and we're going to merge those together. We're going to merge them together so that these coplanar and co-radial surfaces become continuous, and then we're going to go ahead and knit those together at the same time. So we're going to follow that option here as we put our lesson file together. And just because I'm a little nitpicky about this, let's go ahead and change housing mirror and go ahead and change it to just a regular housing mirror. Okay, so once we get those knitted together, we're going to put in a couple different fillets. Again, we're going to incorporate that into our lesson model. We're going to incorporate the housing mirror. We're going to incorporate the knitting and the merging functions in there. But after that, we're going to put in our 1/4 inch outside fillet. And we're also put in a 1/16 of an inch outside fillet. Now, we don't have any fillets on the inside. The reason I'm kind of shy about putting a lot of fillets in here is because we have a lot more features to put inside of this model, and a lot of the fillets that we put in now are going to have to be either suppressed later or we're going to have to work around that. So I'm going to put in all my fillets last. But there is a fillet inside option in here. If you want to right-click on that and go ahead and choose that, you can. We're going to go ahead and put in our 2 outside fillets. And what I mean by an outside fillet or an inside fillet, anywhere you might have a sharp corner, like in this, that would be an outside fillet. Anywhere you would have a sharp corner on the inside, for instance, like along this edge, that would be an inside fillet. So we're not going to do any inside fillets. We probably could do that edge, but we're going to go ahead and pass that off for now. We're going to save that for later. And just take a look at what's coming up. Perhaps in the next lesson, we're going to do a vertical shaft knit. So if you take a look at our vertical shaft, we still have our blue line in there. We're going to go and incorporate that together, and then we're going to thicken our housing. And remember, when we do this, we're going to create a solid body now rather than a surface body. So if we go up here to our bodies folder, now we have a solid body folder, and that solid body is our housing. And then our surface body is still the vertical shaft. And we're going to go ahead and finish that up by thickening the vertical shaft. It shouldn't be housing vertical shaft, but vertical shaft thicken. And then we're going to do a little bit of a discussion about making corrections to our model to try to fix some errors that may occur. So let's get back to our lesson model and let's go ahead and incorporate some of these. So again, like we did before, let's go ahead and turn off our sketches. Not turn them off, but let's go ahead and hide those by going to the eyeglass icon. And the first thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and knit our oil pan to the housing. So this is our oil pan surface body. We're going to knit that to the various housing surface bodies that we have. So the way you do that is you go to your Surfaces tab. We're going to go to the Knit Surface button over here. Selections, it's probably fairly easy to go into our surface bodies selection up here. We're going to select everything except for the vertical shaft trim. If we try to do the vertical shaft trim, I think it's not going to like it. It may give us an error before we even start that. But if we try to knit these together, yeah, it says it can't be joined. But if we unselect the vertical shaft trim, then we can do that. Remember, to knit things together, they have to be continuous without any gaps or overlap. And with the vertical shaft, there is a bit of an overlap. Once we do that, we can do the merge entities here. But I'm going to go ahead and save that for our mirror function, show how quickly that cleans up. So let's go to the green check mark. Now you can see what we've done. And now we're going to mirror these to the other side. So we've surface knitted these together. Let's go ahead and rename that. That's going to be our oil pan dash housing knit. Oh, I need to put in knit, and then we should be done with that. Okay, mirror. We can find mirror by going to our features toolbar. I don't have it on my surfaces toolbar, but I can put it up there if I customize it. But we'll save that for a different lesson. But you will find it on the features manager, features tab up here. If we go down to linear pattern, it's the third item in here. We're going to go to mirror. The face or plane we're going to mirror from is going to be the front plane. So remember, we're going to take everything in front and then mirror that to the back. We're not going to mirror any features. We're not going to mirror any faces necessarily, but what we want to do is it's a little bit more simple here. We're just going to pick our surface bodies. So we can go to our surface bodies folder, which we have two. We're going to open that up, and we are going to choose a vertical shaft and the housing too. We're going to merge that to the other side. Now we're going to do something a little bit different. Typically we would just go to the green check mark here and then call that done and go to, knit our surface and, thicken it eventually after we put in our fillets. But what we can do here, and let's go ahead and take our name here. Let's go ahead and rename that. That's going to be called our housing mirror. We could also call that our housing vertical shaft mirror, but we're just going to emulate our completed model. What we could do is we can right-click on this and go to some of the additional options in here. We can go to merge our solids. Essentially what that means is merge our bodies, our surface bodies. What we're going to do is we're going to take these co-radial and coplanar items that are in here, and we're going to merge those together. So to see what that looks like, if we go to the green check mark, didn't really change anything. So let's try that again. Because I think what we need to do when we merge our solids, we also need to knit our surfaces together too. When we do that, you'll notice that these black lines in here are now going to be, if they're going to be co-radial or coplanar, they're going to be continuous. So if we go to the green check mark here, you notice that cleans up our model quite a bit. Okay, let's put in our, after we rename this, we've already renamed it, let's go ahead and put in our fillets. So we have two outside fillets we're going to do. And we can find our fillets both on the Features tab on our Command Manager and on our Surfaces tab. It does the same thing. It'll recognize fillets and surface bodies as well as features, solid features. So items to fillet, we're going to go ahead and choose these three elements over here. We're going to make that 1/4 inch. We're going to control that a little bit by selecting those one at a time. And if we click on this, you do have some options over here to show you what your previews might be, but we're only going to do a few fillets, as I mentioned before, just because a lot of the fillets we want to put into our model are going to be after a lot of the features we have that's coming later. So, all the default items in here we're going to go ahead and choose. We're going to go to the green check mark, and this time we're going to call this our fillet outside 1/4 inch. So 0.250, I should say, is what that's going to be called. Now we're going to do our next outside fillet. And remember, the outside fillet is a fillet where the sharp edge is going to be on the outside. And if it's going to be in the inside, it would be like this edge too. And again, we're not going to put in those inside fillets. We're going to save those for later. So we can find a fillet option over here, the fillet tool over here under the surfaces tab also. It's the very same thing. We're going to go ahead and choose a couple different surfaces in here. It's going to be that surface over here. This one's going to select the chain. We're going to make that 0.065, 0.0625, a 16th of an inch. And go to the green check mark. Green check mark one more time. And then we're going to go ahead and rename this fillet outside 0.0625. And then bang. I think we're almost done. Okay, so this is it for this lesson. Make certain you save your work and enjoy me on our next lesson, where we will finally convert our surface model into a solid model by using the thicken tool.